about your weekend. And so it was kind of like just a pause and a moment where I was like, wow, okay. Um, so it really kind of helped me kind of stop and think about like what's going on and what's happening. And just that little tiny of encouragement of her stopping and asking me to reflect about my weekend kind of reframed my position in terms of the day. And so it was very, very nice to do that. And it's fitting because this whole topic of the power of encouragement, how this came about is just a couple professors were sitting in a room. Dr. Cook and I were working on trying to figure out how to get in vivo to work here on campus. Our licensing were going out, and we just were working on some things and collaborating with a project that we had. And Dr. Putman comes by with this, I think it was around Halloween time, with this pumpkin and all these flashy candies and all these little verses, not verses, but like sayings. And we just started talking about like, how do you encourage your students and what do you do? It's just kind of an eclectic conversation that kind of came out of just organically what happens. And then we started talking about like, how are we intentional with encouragement and what do we do to be intentional? So it's not just so much to do like the regular job that we do in terms of like, yeah, we grade papers and yes, we put comments on there and tell them how we want them to think, about the content, but there's so much more to our students than just the content in of itself. And so then we talked about like, how do you go about like personalizing your feedback to your students and how do you encourage them? What do you look at? And so it just escalated this whole big conversation. And we decided to start looking at possibly looking at some ways and how to research this. But even before that, we wanted to get, kind of get everybody else's perspective on like, what is encouragement to you? What does it look like? And so we decided to, hey, let's bring it out to EE Week and just get some people's feedback on what they see encouragement within their classroom, and how they go about encouraging their students and the impact that it has not only on the students, but also as a professor as well. And so that is the goal of our conversation today, is just to talk about like, how do you encourage? How does it help you? And how does it help students in terms of your profession and also their success here at school? So I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Putman, and she can give you some intro.
Absolutely. So I think overall, I've always been kind of into encouragement, but I think that it got ramped up during and after COVID because I saw firsthand how much my students were struggling with their mental health and some other things. And so, after COVID in particular, when they came back, was when I started to be extremely intentional, even more so than before. And this National College Health Assessment from last year kind of explains why almost 75% of college students reported moderate or severe psychological distress. A lot of that is, from COVID. Some of it's not, but it definitely has increased since COVID. And then an analysis of 46 studies found that positive teacher and student relationships enhance nearly every measurable aspect of academic success. So I'm going to pause right here and ask anybody who's in the audience if you have seen any of this mental health challenges within your students, either that they've expressed themselves or that you've just observed, because I know I've observed it firsthand, but I was wondering if anybody else had observed it in their students or their population.
Yeah, Rebecca, I will say that I've seen it, I've observed it, and I'm seeing it, I think, even more now, because I think what's happening, this is just my analysis of it, is that we're coming out of some of the things, the supports that we used to have that were available. And so students coming out of that's been a really difficult transition for them. And some of those that have had mental health issues, they're maybe coming out more now because maybe the supports aren't there like they were, or the challenges are just growing, or the stressors maybe. That's just my observation. So I do see that. Anyway.
Anyone else have any comments about what you're seeing?
I'll share something a little unique, and that is that in the dean's office, we see the students who are on suspension. And the ones that we see are either first suspension or they're so far into suspension that the suspension committee won't see them anymore. And I actually noticed a shift last semester that it stopped being as emotional and kind of emergent and went back to more of what we would hear before COVID of time management and adjusting to college life and that sort of thing. So I would say I saw a kind of a pattern, a shift, and then looks like one semester kind of a back to what was more typical before. Now, who knows what we'll see at the end of this year, but those are usually some pretty heartbreaking conversations. And you really hear a lot of struggles. So.
Well, and you just reiterated the research that's out there that mental health issues can have a profound effect on students' academic achievement. And I think I've seen kind of what you're seeing too, maybe a little bit of shift back. But the other shift that I've seen is that it is becoming more acceptable to seek help. And so I think I may be seeing it a little bit more now even than I did before COVID, because it was an issue that was front and center, and students have now become a lot more comfortable not only expressing concerns, but also seeking help. And so I think, that's a positive move in the right direction. And I know in the comments that Misty, you also said that you've observed it: mental health, physical health, relationship dynamics, parenting challenges. So definitely all of those things and more we're seeing. So why encouragement? So there's research that says students are more likely to learn when they feel cared for and valued by their teacher. One reason is that students tend to be more motivated to learn and engage in the classroom when there's this perception, real or not real, that their teacher likes and cares about them. And then there's some really recent research that says that encouraging our students can also make us more effective teachers. And I read the entire article, and it talked about how these positive teacher-student relationships increase our motivation as instructors, where we put forth more effort, we're more engaged. It actually makes us happiness, gives us a little bit more confidence, which in turn may result in greater use of complex, high-impact teaching practices, which then results in greater achievement from our students. So I'm hoping that that is true, because we're always looking for ways to be more effective teachers. And I feel like when I have good relationships with my students, I look forward to teaching in those classes a lot more, and I feel like, I guess, more responsible to them. Okay, so we're going to share some ways of how we encourage our students with intentionality. And each of us have different ways. And one of the ways that I have, and I'm not going to take credit for this because I got this from Jake Heller in the College of Business, is he found that I think they were sophomore students, they would never come to his office hours. And so before COVID, he actually offered them extra credit if they would just show up to his office during his office hours for 5 or 10 minutes and have a conversation with them. And it couldn't be about, anything related to his class. They just sat down and talked. And he said that the semester he started that he had most students take advantage. And then he realized that they were more likely to visit his office hours because they knew where his office was. He knew he wasn't scary. So I stole that idea. And I encourage the students to meet with me one-on-one in my office, or if they can't, because I have a lot of working students, on Zoom for 10 minutes at the beginning of the semester. And I do offer 5 points extra credit. And I basically ask them 2 main questions. What do I need to know about you? And what do you need to be successful in my class? And I take copious amounts of notes. And there's some students that are very open with me and, share, I'm working 3 jobs. I'm a single mom. I have anxiety. There are some that don't share as much. But it is helpful because I'm going to support the single mom who's working 3 jobs a little differently than I'm going to support the 20-year-old who's living at home and not having to work a job. They both need my support, but just in different ways. And so I take notes and actually refer to them throughout the semester. Like I might text a student and ask about their child by name. How's Oliver doing? I know he was sick. And I didn't remember that her child was named Oliver, but it was in my notes, right? And I refer to that. and it goes a long way. So just when it comes to encouragement, one size does not fit all. But I have a whole notebook full of information about students, and I use that to encourage them on an individual level. I also use the Remind texting app to communicate with my students. And if you're not familiar, Remind is just an app. They don't have your texting number. You don't have theirs. It's just these random numbers. You can get transcripts also. And I have found that my students respond much better to texting than Canvas announcements or even email. They mention this. It gets mentioned in my evaluations very regularly. And I do weekly group reminders, but I do monthly individual check-ins. So this is one that I just sent last week to my second semester juniors. I just said, hi student, I just want to check in with you and see how you're doing. How are you feeling about the case study? This is the big assignment they just turned in yesterday. How can I best support you these last few weeks of the semester? And I would say 90% of them responded back to me. And it was really good information. And I really like Remind. And then the last thing is the most effective in what kind of Rhone was talking about. I have handwritten notes, and he talked about a pumpkin, and it's a purple pumpkin. It's a little candy pumpkin, and I still have it. And it is always filled with handwritten notes. They're not individualized. They don't have names, but 2 to 3 times a semester, I will bring in this purple pumpkin when I can tell that a group is struggling. And they just have statements like this on it. Always believe that something wonderful is about to happen. It could be right around the corner. Your time to shine is soon. And I tell them that as I'm writing them, I think about these students, and I said, and I am wishing you well. I said, I don't know who's going to get what little encouraging note, but I'm always positive that it's the one that's going to be exactly what you need to hear. And I've had a couple moments where students have actually teared up reading their notes, and I see them tuck them into their notebooks. And, I'm not going to take credit for this. It was actually inspired by this TikTok account. And it's called Dear Stranger. And she leaves encouraging notes for people. And if I were to actually play the end of that TikTok, you would see that man almost tear up. And he looks at it and he reads it again. And he looks around and he tucks it in his pocket. And it's very carefully tucks in his pocket, like he doesn't want to lose it. Like he tucks it deep and actually checks to make sure it's there. And I've seen some of that same reaction when I give my students. In fact, I did it yesterday in class because I have these Block 2 students that are just losing their minds. And I knew they needed it yesterday. And I had one that he said, oh my gosh, you don't know how much I need to hear these words. And I said, well, they're just for you. And I mean it. And I also can sometimes sense my colleagues, we struggle too. And I've been known to go into with my purple pumpkin and say, hey, do you need some words of encouragement? Just pick the ones out. I'm confident the ones you pick are exactly what you want to hear. And so that's what I have done to kind of be very intentional. It's a lot of work, but definitely worth it. So I think other people have some other ways that they're going to share.
So when I start each semester, I try to set up group norms, which is something that we do as counselors and in mental health professions. When we start groups, to keep the group involved, we ask everyone to create group norms or group rules for our learning space. And so for me, I do this as a small group activity the first night of class, and we write these on one of those really large Post-its, and I bring that to class every week. And we can always revisit rules as people need different things throughout the semester to feel safe to be able to participate. Another thing that I do is called the parking lot, is that I have another paper in the back of the classroom, and as they leave, they can put a sticky note, and I say it could be something positive, it could be something negative, and that I show them how to fold it up and stick it on there so it's anonymous and no one else is reading the parking lot information. Just kind of what's one takeaway you liked of class, or what is something that is going on in class that you don't want to say in front of others, but you need me to know what's going on in our classroom space. And then every class I come in and before I start, I do a check-in. I just want to know how everyone's doing, how everyone's weekend was going, how, if it's midterm time, how studying going, if they have comps that I know that they're taking, what do y'all need today in class? Do we need it to be more of a chill class, or does it need to be really active? And sometimes I can feel that just walking into the room, like what my students are feeling, and I'll say, hey, the room feels kind of low today. What's going on with everyone? And that way, again, I'm showing them that I'm noticing that there's a shift, there's something different about our classroom environment today. And also with noticing, I notice students' behavior. I think I might be in a unique position than some faculty on this campus, is that my classroom sizes are smaller. And so I'm able to see shifts in students really quickly. If there's someone that participates a lot and then all of a sudden they didn't participate all of class, that's a big indicator for me that something's going on with that student and I need to do a check-in. I typically send an email. If I'm really concerned that this shift in behavior has happened more than a couple of classes, I may have them come in for a meeting, not in any discipline. And I make sure up front that I'm telling them, hey, I just want to check in and have a conversation with you today. Do you have time before class or whatever? And so I think students really appreciate that, they're not just another number in my class, that I'm able to look at that. And then when I grade, I don't always just focus on what the student did wrong on an assignment. I really try to point out things that I really value from their assignment, that I know that they worked hard, or if they improved from the last written assignment to the next, I tell them that, like, I see a lot of improvement in this assignment. These are some things that I really enjoyed about your share, because a lot of our work is very self-reflective, and so I'll say thank you for sharing that with me, or things like that. So it's not just I'm just marking the things that are incorrect or not APA formatted and those kinds of things, and so trying to encourage them in those ways.
All right, let me share a few things that I do. Obviously personalized emails, are something that I do on not a regular basis, but I usually, when I personalize it, I try to make sure that I'm making a point to kind of what, Dr. Putman was talking about, like something that's personalized to them. So I too also have a notebook that has information about them, if they have kids and things like that. And sometimes in a discussion post, they'll post some things that's personal in nature, and I'll throw that in the email so that they see that I'm reading their post and like I'm vested in them. We had one student, I'll give you an example, that was running said in there that they were training for a triathlon, and so I shared with her a couple pictures of me doing a triathlon, and encouraged her, find out when her date was, and then in class on the announcements, hey, so and so's doing the race this weekend, wish her luck. So like it had nothing to do with the content, nothing at all. This is an asynchronous class, and to this day, like we connect and we do things in terms of conversations and stuff like that. And I've never personally met her, so the connection that you can get by just doing encouragement through personalizing some things makes some good feedback too. Then assignment feedback, like every week, and I'm kind of skipping around here, but every week I do a weekly announcement, and I don't necessarily say their name, but I'll quote sometimes, pieces from their work or pieces from their discussion post or some kind of question that they ask. I'll pull that in, but I try to give them credit at times when I do those things, so that way they're honored by their classmates, and that it's not me that's coming up with the questions, but I honor them for coming up with those questions. And so I also do email reminders in Canvas. Those are easy because you can automate those. And so sometimes I'll video 2 or 3 messages to them and have those kind of automated. They don't know when I create them, but it definitely lets them know that I'm thinking about their success and stuff like that. So you can go to the next slide. I think I got just a couple more here. I use artwork. And so how is this encouraging? Well, because I throw something that's not even related to the subject matter into the class. And so kind of like what Dr. Muncie does, like, he has like that check-in at the beginning. I use artwork sometimes to do that. But then I also use that same artwork to help them also describe some of the content as well. And so making those parallels between the artwork and their lives. So it's neat because it encourages them because they see education from a different lens, or what they're doing from a different lens. And I just a lot of positive feedback from doing activities that are outside the norm. And so this is kind of one of those elements where I feel like I'm a better teacher because I'm thinking about how I can encourage them with different things. And then intentional student check-ins, like sometimes you just know there's an issue, there's a problem, or there's a concern, or you'll get a post and you'll be like, wait, that sounds completely out of character. Or you read an assignment and you're like, this is not typical of the student's assignment. There's something going on. And taking that extra step to send an email or request a Zoom meeting or a phone call or come visit in person. 9 times out of 10, what I've experienced is students will just tell me in an email and they'll be like, thanks for checking up. And if occasionally they want to meet and they just want to talk, and it comes down to like, how do you strategize in terms of like mental health and get things back in order and kind of like restructure what's important in life, and being okay to tell them it's okay to back off on coursework a little bit until you get things together, and we'll work with you and just, how are we going to help you get to that next level. So all those kind of things of that willingness, just encouraging them to be their very best in all aspects and understanding some things in their life circumstances definitely pay off. So all these take time, and intentionality, but they're worth, from my perspective, every single bit of time that I put into it. So particularly for the students, for sure. Okay, so Dr. Taylor Cook is not able to come today, and so she just wanted to share a couple things that she does, but she does announcements with students and giving them resources in words. And this is when I was talking with her about that. She will sometimes give them additional resources outside the content that will help focus them on what maybe they were missing the assignment. So it's not just her giving feedback. Not feedback, but in the announcements, making sure that they can extend their learning with the videos. And then also, anytime a student has stopped working, she will send them an individual email to reach out to them and find out what's going on. Very similar to some of the things that you've heard some of us say. But one of the new strategies that she started picking up, and she teaches a lot of asynchronous classes, is she started to do a lot of one-on-one videos with the students. And so instead of like just sending out an email, she'll like physically record herself to send it out to the students. And she is excited about how that has been progressing for her and her students. So we want to know from you guys, how do you encourage your students with intentionality?
Well, I think, Ron, just one of the things that you talked about, which is getting to know your students. I have found that the better I know my students, the better I am at talking with them and doing those little things, those things that I know about them, like, hey, you're about to do that race. When I'm at my best, I know my students really well. When I'm at my worst, I do not know my students very well. And I've been on both sides of that equation. And so it's, I'm always looking for ways of getting to know my students. And one of the best ways, to be honest with you, is I eavesdrop. I do a lot of eavesdropping right before class. And I tell the students, I said, as a teacher, just know that if you're in my vicinity, there is no privacy. We're all together in this room. We're listening. And when they do group work, I listen to them and they share things. And that has helped me. And I learned that as a middle school teacher. And it's helped me from middle school all the way to with adults.
Dr. Reinierson just called that strategic eavesdropping. I like that.
I think everything you guys have described today reminds me of something that's a little bit old school, and that is a concept called teacher immediacy. And so calling someone by name and remembering personal details and that sort of stuff, and make perhaps eavesdropping so that you know their personal details. Giving feedback that's positive and constructive as opposed to focusing on the negative, like you mentioned, Dr. Muncie. So everything y'all have talked about reminded me of some stuff from way back in terms of teacher immediacy and warmth.
Well, and even standing outside your classroom and greeting them, that's, as a former elementary teacher, that's what we did. We stood outside our classroom. And a lot of even middle school and high school teachers now do that. They stand outside their classroom and they greet them and they make that eye contact. And so it's related to the brain research. There's some really good stuff in the chat too.
Yeah, I also think too, like, I've switched from doing, I was a principal before I became a professor. Before that, I was a math teacher, and all these strategies of, being at the classroom, knowing the kids' names were all there. But then I started teaching online, and that's like completely different kind of scope, right? And so that's why video announcements before like classes became important to me, because that was like my introduction to the class. And so a lot of times the day of the class, I'll send them like a preview of like, hey, here's what's happening, here's what's going on. Just because I'm trying to get them, my face in front of them, so they know that I'm thinking about them and what's going to be happening that evening. So,
well, and I want to ask Dr. Misty Smith, you said that you actually mail notes to your students, which is so unexpected. I would love to know, how do they respond to that?
I think initially they're quite shocked by it. I think because it's kind of a dying art, but it's something that was impressed upon me. I can't take credit for it, from my own mother and grandmother, that they do it way better than I do. But I've tried to just continue that practice, because something about being in your own writing and, actually taking the intentionality to actually handwrite something, I think has a lot of value. And being able to hold on to those things and then pull them out and over time and reflect on those. And so they are kind of taken back by it, but I always get an immediate email or something saying, I just got your note in the mail and that just meant so much, or, I really needed that. And so I think that is something I've tried to stay on top of when they share those things with me, so that I can kind of take that extra step to support them.
Wow.
awesome.
I love that idea. Absolutely. Anybody else want to share any of ideas before we move on to our next point?
And Jasmine had something in the chat also, Dr. Putman. Just circling back when someone reaches out about personal challenges and checking in on them to make sure they're okay, and if there's any additional assistance that she can provide. So,
and I know in the College of Ed, we just had somebody come and talk to us about all the different resources that are available to students, and we have this amazing spreadsheet, that we can provide resources beyond just academic, because sometimes it's just, I don't have the money to pay for my certification tests, or I'm short $100 this month for my rent or childcare, those kind of things. And having those resources outside to share with them like that, Jasmine, is brilliant, because we know that what happens outside the classroom has such an impact on what happens inside the classroom. And if we can encourage them in those ways, I think we'll see a lot more academic success. Yeah. All right, so our next question is, how does encouraging our students strengthen our connection with students? The biggest thing that I have seen is that students don't want to disappoint me. They want me to be proud of them. And so I get higher quality work because they're like, I want to do my best work for you. They seem motivated to actually complete the assignments and turn them in. It's often mentioned in my course evaluations, and they feel safe sharing even personal information, which helps me better support them. And so I have seen only positives from the encouragement that I've been intentional about.
So I, like Dr. Putman, I've seen it on my course evaluations that students really feel valued in my class and feel like they're seen and heard. Students have really disclosed some really personal information, some things like crises that they're going through, that they're not ready to tell everybody in the faculty what's going on, or their fellow classmates. And that's the biggest compliment to me in some ways as a professor, and also as department head, because of that, that dynamic of just being seen as, in a leadership role sometimes prevents my connection with students because there's a fear of or something. And so students being able to share such personal things sometimes to me just shows that this encouragement is working with students, even no matter what position I am at the university. And I think the other thing is I start to see students really come into their authenticity in class. It might take a few semesters for that, but I've seen students really feel like they can be themselves. And that really shines through with their work with clients too, as being authentic and transparent with clients and fellow classmates as they go through the program.
Well, I'm just going to hit on some of it. I echo many of what they're saying. I think one of the things that was interesting is in the leadership courses that I teach, a lot of times I'll know what position they are in currently, like as a teacher or assistant principal, and I know where they want to be, right? Where they want to be a principal, or they want to be assistant principal, or they want to be like a director or something like that. And I'm able to sometimes give them encouragement when they like have like a reflection or a concept that really is applicable to their circumstance, and they show me how they can apply it. I really make a point to be like, this will help you when you become that next role. And I've gotten some really good feedback from students about like me saying that those encouraging words were not just, for the assignment per se, but also towards their career goals and their life goals in terms of their aspirations. So that was really cool to see. And then it also requires me to really be just me as a person, like in terms of relationships. It really requires me to think about where they're at individually and their growth throughout the course, right? So as I'm learning this material and I'm figuring out what's going on, I have to I can't just flip it encouragement. It's got to have purpose to it. And the only way that it can have purpose to it is if I've actually really considered the work that they've submitted to me, and considered like how they're responding, to some of the course objectives, and really, really push them to get the ultimate outcome that I'm desiring for them. And so, and that just takes really intentionality in terms of knowing the student, where they're at, kind of their context. And that's difficult to do in an asynchronous class, but it's not impossible. So like you have to ask some of those probing questions. And then sometimes when you're grading and you put those comments in the comments section, it's not like you just put the comments and you disappear. You got to go back and kind of make sure that they respond and ask a question, expect them to respond, right? And so those are some things that I've done in order for me to be able to filter and have some conversations with my students. So this is for Dr. Cook, who could not be with us today. But the biggest thing is like they feel like they know her. And I can't speak for her specifically, but my first semester teaching online, went to graduation, and a student came up to me and they were like, Dr. Rhone, and started telling me all this stuff about me. And I just gonna be honest, I didn't know the student because all I saw was their icon, right? And the icon and the person didn't match each other. Then when they told me their name, I was like, oh my goodness, you were in this course, because I knew their name, but I didn't know the picture. I didn't know them, but they talked to me like they knew me. And I can see when you have a really good relationship with your students through encouragement, they know you. And even though they don't see you all the time, right? So it's interesting dynamic. So the question we have for you all is, we shared with you a little bit of how it connects us to our students. How does encouraging your students connect you to your students? What are some things that you've felt or seen?
I taught in the fall adjunct course, the Block 1 students, and it kind of caught me off guard a little bit that I had a student who was struggling with some things, and we had emailed back and forth, but he came one day and he was really emotional, and emailed me after class. He goes, "I'm so sorry." He goes, "I didn't want you to see me like that." And he felt bad. And I thought, gosh, I would have never even thought twice about it. I think it's just, again, evidence of where our students are coming from out of the pandemic and everything. But I think that just they feel vulnerable. So if you allow them to, be open and show them that you care, they're comfortable with that vulnerability showing. And so I was, not happy for what the student was going through, but that they were comfortable enough to, express that and feel that way in front of me, and not, and just kind of tell how they felt, even though it was, struggle, and he was a little embarrassed, but still, I think he felt a connection enough to come and talk to me and kind of let his guard down a little bit.
One of the things I've heard our students describe Tarleton as is a private school education for a public school price. Because I know at a lot of public universities, especially in the DFW area, there isn't that personalized. What we're providing and what we're providing in Stephenville is unique among universities, I think. We know our students. And if you talk to students at other universities, they're like, my professor doesn't even know my name, or, these kind of things. And so even in our on-loan programs and our face-to-face, there's what you just described, Shannon. I mean, that's why students choose Tarleton sometimes over other universities, because we do know them and we provide that, that encouragement in other ways. Okay, so I think we're moving on to our next and last. This is actually our last one of just how does it impact them, because we are student focused. This is why we're here, and do we think it's worthwhile? So the impacts that I've seen, and this kind of relates to what we just talked about, but one of the things that hasn't been mentioned is decreased absenteeism. I rarely have students miss class. Sometimes they'll even be really sick, and I'm like, really, stay home, don't bring that. But they want to be in class, which is so refreshing. And they are much more likely to come to my office hours and ask for help. And then we can catch them before they fail. Instead of trying to kind of fix things once they've kind of gone awry. Students know that I value them as a human, not just as a student. They're not just a number. They're a human with lots of things going on besides school. And then I think it's built an enormous amount of trust between my students and me. I think it's worth it. It's time consuming, but I also think my return on investment is well worth it. It actually sometimes makes my job easier. Because like I said, it's more proactive than reactive or fixing things. And so I often think it actually saves me time. I don't know for sure. Maybe we can study that in this research, but I do think it makes my job easier and more enjoyable too when I'm encouraging students.
Yeah, so for me, I see that students are more engaged in class. They're more likely to share. Even the students that are introverts will eventually start sharing because they feel like they're in a safe space or a safer space for them. As I mentioned before, they are more and more authentic as the semester goes on, as they get to know me, as I get to know them and their classmates. And they're willing to meet and share life impacts, both those positives and those crisis situations with me. Again, I think it's that trust of help. I will be able to, if I don't know the answer, find them resources to be able to get those answers. And like Dr. Putman said, it's definitely worthwhile. It does take time, but the rewards that I see are too great for both, my students and, me as a professor.
Well, I just noticed that students reach out to support when they show vested interest in them. They'll come and they'll ask you stuff. The authentic feedback. When I say authentic feedback, like when you encourage them and you show them that you're willing to be human with them, sometimes they'll provide you feedback that you don't necessarily want to hear, but it's the right feedback because they know that you care enough for them that they want you to make sure that you are thinking about things. Man, the learning environment is strong when encouragement and that culture of just, helping people be successful. It creates a really solid learning environment for students. And those that are struggling or don't want to be a part of that, it's definitely gives us pause to think about like how do we cultivate that in those that struggle sometimes to interact with the culture that's created in the class. And so but yeah, I think it's the intentional moments of encouragement. I think they foster healthy relationships both with this, and they impact both the students and myself. I know for me. And I use the word intentionality because I think there's some things we just do as teachers on a regular basis, but then there's other times where we have to kind of pause and push ourselves to be more intentional with encouraging our students. And so yeah, I just think it's has impacts on students that we don't even always know and fully understand. And Dr. Cook, not being able to have face-to-face weekly interactions, that means that you can't always connect with them, but having words of encouragement with them does connect them, and allows her to be able to get to know them a little bit before class starts in their conversations, that she normally wouldn't have with students in face-to-face. And she thinks it's completely worth it. I agree with her. It is worth it. It just takes the time. And I think you all heard her say it does take some time and intentionality. But I think that's a good study to think about. Like, is it really more time, or is it actually less time because you build those relationships and you don't have to hunt down somebody who's struggling because they come and talk to you? So I think there's some things to think about with that as well, for sure. So our question to you, you want to go back? It's like, what are your guys' thoughts about the impacts? How does encouragement impact your students, or that you've seen impact your students? And do you think it's worthwhile to be intentional about encouraging your students?
I think it's absolutely 100% worth it. But what you say is correct. It takes a lot of time, especially at first, before you get the hang of it. I know that after every quiz on my online classes, I have it set up in the grade book so that I can see all of their quiz grades right in a row. And I send a personalized message to every student after every quiz that's basically just says, I see you. Look at this. Even if it's at a 10th of a point improvement, I'm like, hey, any improvement is good improvement. I see you. So all of the way that I reach out to them is basically, I see you. And everything that you've said, I think holds true. They feel more connected to us. And I get so many just emails, not just responses to my comments, but where they actually take the time to email me outside of Canvas and say, it means so much to me that you are seeing me. It makes me want to do my work. It makes me want to do better because it's become so important to me not to let you down. So I think it is definitely worth the time. 100%. And one thing I was when we were talking about encouragement, I didn't speak up quick enough, but I went to NITOP this year, and there was a professor there that was talking about how within his office hours, he has started hosting what he calls a student hour. And it's, during office hours, I need for you to, make an appointment if you want to come see me, just to make sure I'm here. But the student hour is 1 hour that I'm in my office, no matter what, every week. Students online can Zoom me, they can call me, they can FaceTime me, they can come in here, and we can talk about anything at all. You don't have to have an appointment. If you need me, I'm here. And I've had multiple students take advantage of that throughout the semester. I need somebody to talk to. And I think that's so important because a lot of times these students don't have any other avenue to share their struggles with. And somebody mentioned the presentation that we had. I thought that was so helpful because some of these students that they struggle with, it's heartbreaking. And I didn't really know all the resources we had available to them. But if we can help plug them in and get them the help that we need, I think that we're going to definitely retain them, but also help make them more successful. So, and I have enjoyed y'all's presentation. Y'all killed it. Thank you so much.
Well, Carrie, I think you also pointed out that we're modeling professional behavior and empathy, which is what we need as a society.
I agree.
It doesn't matter what profession you're in. There's an element of empathy involved and that compassion. And by modeling it for us, whether we're in, teaching or principal or social work or counseling or all of the different areas that we're in, it's just a valuable skill to have that we don't necessarily teach in our textbooks. And so
I agree.
Really like that you pointed that out. I was also going to mention, so my daughter is a senior at the University of Texas in Austin in the teaching program. And she mentioned that one of her teachers does something like you described, the student hour, but she goes by Starbucks every week at the same time and gets a box of coffee and has coffee hour with them. And it's actually in a classroom. And Madeline says, like, their whole cohort shows up for coffee hour. But, she often has it before class or something, but she said it's her favorite time of the week is because they just talk. And I thought I might steal that idea because,
dude, that is fabulous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And your student hour reminded me of that because it's just coffee hour. She has free Starbucks coffee and it's in a little like jug. So
I will tell you that it has broken my heart because I have had more students this semester than ever before come and just pour out whatever's going on with them. And sometimes I just feel like I'm shell shocked. I'm like, oh my gosh, how are they going to school, much less succeeding?
Well, I think Shannon, Dr. Stoker is going to share some of just a little bit about the research behind kind of our study. Yeah, I can put that up there.
Sure. So looking at, I found a pretty unique study from Inside Higher Ed. They did about 2,000 college students, undergrads, and they found that students really are desiring connections with their instructors. And I thought that was really unique because sometimes we tend to think, well, they just want to come in, do their work and leave, but they actually want these connections, and they have found that they're not really getting them from many of their instructors present company, not counted, right? But that there probably are a lot of instructors and professors out there that are not being intentional about making these connections, and students are noticing them. And the problem is students don't necessarily know how to go about making those connections. And I think about how unique we are at Tarleton. We're a first gen university, and a lot of those students may be intimidated being able to come to their instructor or professor and ask questions or express their concerns. So I think when we can put ourselves out there and say we're available and do things to be intentional about encouragement and making those relationships, students are going to respond to those, just like the stories that we've been hearing here today. So they are wanting those, and we need to do our part to at least reach out or provide those opportunities for them to make those connections. And then in another study that I read, I don't know if you're familiar with Nell Noddings. She does a lot on caring and encouragement in education, but there was a study based a lot around her works, and it said that demonstrating of caring serves as a foundation for establishing and maintaining some strong interpersonal relationships with students. And that's, again, exactly what we've talked about here today, that when we can actually show that we care, and we build those relationships with students, and those are relationships that they actually are wanting, and we need to be more intentional about that. And the research is pretty strong. I think there was another study about they surveyed 42 different pieces of literature and found that when students have strong relationships, it basically improves every aspect of their education, not just their grades, but just their overall attitude, their positive attitude towards it, as well as their build self-efficacy. So those are things that just build along the way with us building these connections with students and having those connections. And you can see some of the things that on there that, the growth, change, students, when there's disconnection, they feel isolated. And then that's when we see them not showing up to class, they're disconnected. But yet, when there are those connections, they're healthy. They look for those authentic connections. And I think, Dr. Putman, you were talking a minute ago about the, what we're modeling. And I do think this is like a soft skill that we have here for our students, that, they will take this, we're education. So we think about them connecting with their students, or Dr. Muncie connecting with their clients. But, this should be anywhere in the workplace that they're going. This could be something we're modeling, whether an education student or an engineering student, that they can take into their workplace beyond the classroom here. And this was just, I kind of mentioned this a minute ago, kind of blurred the two slides together for time so we could have some time for more additional comments.
And this is just a reiteration of how important those student-teacher relationships, in particular, the effective relationships, because we talk about the, content knowledge, are you a great teacher? But we don't always value the emotional relationships, but it's highly correlated with everything that we care about. And then the recent research about how it actually helps us be better teachers too. So I'm going to let Ron take over here and tell you a little bit more about our study, because we're looking for participants.
Yeah, so we are going to pilot a study here, and we wanted to invite you all to participate. You came to this session about encouragement, and one of the things that I'm learning as a 1.5-year-old professor is you kind of want to make sure that your research is kind of aligned with the things that you're passionate about. And this is definitely one of those areas where I love the fact that we figure out ways to encourage. And so what I'd like to do is invite you to be a part of a study. And so we're going to kind of look at how encouragement impacts the relationships of students and professors. And from that, we'll have some questions that relate to, like, how does it impact your teaching? How does it impact your thinking about the teaching? All those different kind of things like that, in terms of what are we doing to purposefully, intentionally encourage our students in academia. And so I really think that this would benefit our institution, also benefit you as a professional as well. And we just want to invite you to be a part of it. And so we're still working out the details of what it looks like, but it's as simple as you doing what you normally do, but just being reflective about it, and maybe trying something new, right? And getting your students to give you some feedback on maybe the new things that are there, or what their sentiments are in terms of the encouragement they feel from you as a professor. And so I just want to invite you. I'm gonna put the link. Oh, the link's already there. Link is in there for you to sign up. And we will contact you once we kind of get that rolling a little bit further down the line. Feel free to share this with anybody else you think might want to be interested in studying how they encourage their students in their classroom as a reflective measure. We think it's a great place for us to just kind of stop and pause and ask ourselves, how are we encouraging our students? What are we doing to encouraging our students? I learned a couple of strategies today that I hope that you learned as well, that you can then go and share with others. So that way we can do everything we can to create an environment that is nothing but success for our students, and not just our students, but for our fellow colleagues who sometimes struggle to find ways to reach the students who are not doing what we hope for them to do. And it could be as simple as a little note of encouragement to take it to the next step. And so I just encourage you guys to join, and look forward to another time. That's all I got.
Well done. Thank you so much for this presentation. And I feel encouraged listening to a group of educators talk about how we can encourage not only our students, but each other. This is such a refreshing session, and I really believe we all needed this. And everybody at the university could learn from your ideas. I know I have, and I plan to use some of these ideas in my class. Thank you so much for these wonderful ideas.
Well, join our study so you can study it too.
All right.
Shameless plug. That's all I gotta say. So.
No, it's good. It's good. We need to study this. All right. Does anybody else have any questions before we leave? We have a few minutes left, but if there aren't any questions, we can
I
close
just
our
wanted
session
to let you know, when you click on that link, it's saying something about needing permission. So just want you to know that. Has someone else tried to click on it?
Oh, let me click on it.
I clicked on it and was able to go to it, but I wonder if I'm signed into my Tarleton account. I'm in my Tarleton Google account.
Okay.
You might have to change the permissions that anybody in any
account can do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll do that real quick. Thank you for letting me know
Sure,
that.
just wanted you to know that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I just noticed that as well. It told me I needed permission, and yeah. So.
All right. Thanks for facilitating,
Absolutely.
Dr.
All right.
Gentry. We appreciate
Oh,
you.
Thank you.
No, and thank you. We'll hopefully learn more about this as we go, and maybe next year, we'll come back and talk about this again and have a little bit of research, as well as we've applied it to our classes. Yeah. All right. Bye, everybody.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.